In this episode of In the Trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics, we talk to the iconic Boomer Esiason about Joe Burrow and what's going through Joe Burrow's mind for his first start in the National Football League after knee rehabilitation, after knee surgery. Is he fully recovered, not just physically, but mentally? And Boomer Esiason tells a couple of stories about playing through injury, one that nobody, I don't think, has ever heard. You'll be interested in this. You're in the Trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics. Special guest, and I mean very special guest, the legendary Boomer Esiason is in the house. Boomer, thanks so much. How are you, sir?
Always great to see you, Dave. Thanks for having me on, as always.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So let's talk about the opener, September 12th. Joe Burrow will be in the huddle and taking snaps against the Minnesota Vikings. What do you think will be going through Joe Burrow's mind?
You know, it's been a long off season, and rightfully so, coming through that knee injury and how debilitating it was and fighting his way all the way back. There's no question that he'll have butterflies. He should have butterflies. You know, I was out there a couple of weeks ago, and I was interviewing him as we sat down and we kind of compared our films together and everything else. I could tell that he's ready to go. You could tell that his leg looked, while he had a huge scar in his leg, he walked off confidently. You know, I've been watching him in practice. Everything about the young man seems like he is ready 100%. But as you know, you've come through injuries. I've come through injuries. You never truly know until you get back out there and you know that you can protect yourself. You can trust your knee and then finally get that off of your shoulders and then just play free and easy like he did last year as a rookie.
That final box to check where you actually get hit, go to the ground, get up, dust yourself off. Yep, everything's good. Knee's good. It's all good. How important is that to check that final box? And if you were playing the quarterback position for this game like Joe Burrow will be, how soon would you want that to happen?
You never want to get hit, and you can appreciate that as being an offensive lineman that used to protect guys like me.
Right.
But ultimately, we know we're going to get hit. We know we're going to get hit. It's just a matter of when and if and how bad is it going to be. It's like Saquon Barkley here in New York. He's got to come off of a knee injury, a running back a little bit differently than a quarterback. You know, Joe does run, though. You know, that's the thing. People don't realize just how good of an athlete he really, truly is. And that goes back to his days of playing basketball in Athens. You know, he was an all-state point guard. So mobility is a big part of his game, even though he plays the position the way that I would want my quarterback to play it, standing in the pocket, making reads, and getting rid of the ball quickly. So I think all of those jitters are going to be gone, after the first snap, after the first series, and then he'll settle in. He's got a lot of great players around him, Dave, especially offensive playmakers. And for Bengal fans who are old enough to remember, it reminds me of my 1985 team because I took over in the middle of that season, and we had just started adding just more and more offensive talent to go along with the talent that we already had there, Rodney Holtman and Chris Collinsworth. But maybe what we had then that isn't so solid right now, and you know better than I would, is the offensive line. My offensive line was tremendous for about 7 years there. I still think that is a question mark for the Bengals coming into this season.
With that said, and fortunately, you never had to have a surgically, repaired whatever it might be and rehab from that and then go play. But you've played hurt. I mean, you've played injured. And when you're in the final stages of rehabilitation process, in your mind, you're still, finishing off that stage of coming back from injury. How do you get that out of your head? I mean, how do you focus? How do you eliminate that? How do you have selective amnesia that's not going to be a factor whatsoever?
It's kind of interesting. After the 1988 season in which we went to the Super Bowl, I got hurt in December, and I hurt my left shoulder, and I played all of December with the shoulder that was hanging off my arm.
Right.
And Sam Weish and everybody knew that it was important that I was out there. I was running the no huddle offense, and thank thank God we had that great offensive line. Thank God we had the emergence of Ickey Woods to go along with James Brooke, and we had enough support that we didn't have to throw nearly as much as we did earlier in the season. After that season was over, Dave, I went and had an orthogram. Now, this is before MRIs were even available. And this is where they would shoot a dye into your shoulder, and then they would see through pictures and x-rays as to what the problem was. I had an allergic reaction to the dye. And
Oh,
my left arm in the off season basically was locked down. I could not move it. I could not move it an inch. That's how bad my shoulder was that off season going into the '89 season. And I remember that I think it was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and the question was, can Boomer bring it? And he had a picture of me throwing the ball in training camp that summer. So I actually had gotten through it. But what I didn't know in the back of my mind, was I going to be able to take a hit? And I think in the '89 season, we opened up at Chicago. And I do remember getting hit, but I think it was in Chicago, and falling on my shoulder and it not hurting. And I was saying, okay, I'm good to go. I'm finally back. And again, it took that first hit. It took me to actually feel whether or not my shoulder could withstand it. So I didn't have surgery, but I did have that allergic reaction. And I would imagine that Joe Burrow is going to be going through the same type of thing as he lines up against the Minnesota Vikings this weekend.
well, it's interesting because I remember Super Bowl season. I remember Sam Weich saying to me a couple of times, Lapham, you don't have any idea how tough this son of a gun is. Boomer's shoulder's a mess. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, he's been playing. His shoulder's a mess. All of December, this guy's been sucking it up. I mean, it's a mess. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. He goes, no, it's unbelievable what he's doing here. So, I mean, the fact that I guess great ones not only have physical talent, but man, just unbelievable mental toughness, right? I mean, that's a huge part of it, isn't it?
It is. And, a 16-game season, as long as that was, we're adding another game to this season. So the one thing I will say about Joe Burrow that he didn't get to feel, which I wish he would have through the entire season last year, is the ups and downs, ebbs and flows, and the momentum shifts that happen in games, especially when you're playing against other quarterbacks. So this week will be Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins is not going to come in and score 10 points. They're going to score probably somewhere between, I would say, 18 and 27 points. So that means there's going to be ebbs and flows in a game. And, for young quarterbacks, you have to deal with those things. You have to understand that somehow you're going to have to make a play to turn the momentum in your team's favor. So I think Joe has got to learn that aspect of the game again, but he should be better. Like I asked him last year when he was up there and he was making audibles at the line of scrimmage, was somebody in the helmet telling him to do that, or was he doing this on his own? And he was doing it on his own. And the other thing that I really appreciated about him is he didn't wear one of those sleeves that had all the plays on it, like you see some other guys doing. That means that he is so in tune to his offense that he doesn't need one of those cheat sheets on his wrist. I never had a cheat sheet. I didn't like it. I didn't want it. It was too confusing. I just wanted to know everything that was going on around me because I felt like that was my responsibility. And that's what Sam Weich said to me. This is your responsibility to know our offense. And I think that Joe Burrow is a smart enough guy, a tough enough guy to be the long-term solution here and to be the answer, to the question as to whether or not he's a Super Bowl guy. He is a Super Bowl winning quarter. He will be. I guarantee you he will be. It's not going to be this year, but in the next 5 to 6 years, somewhere along the line, the Bengals are going to turn the corner like the Browns have turned the corner, last year. And the Bengals are going to be a team that everybody's going to fear. So they're in the middle of that building process. He's coming off of a knee injury. So I expect modest improvement this year, but I do think that he is a reason to be bullish on the Bengals moving forward.
How tough is it an opener? You're playing quarterback like Joe Burrow is, and you've got a knee reconstruction. You went through the rehab process. You're starting, and it's the first game of the season, so you don't know really exactly what to expect whatsoever out of Mike Zimmer's defensive packages. How tough is that? How tough is that week one going in there with all those unknowns?
Well, it's that's part of the game. I could say the same thing about 31 other teams. the Vikings are coming in. They're playing the Bengals. There's always that aspect of I'm not really sure what they're going to do to us or where they think they can attack us until the game actually starts. And then you got to have a coaching staff that has the ability to make the in-game adjustments to take advantage of what they're trying to do to you. So I can't imagine that Minnesota is going to come in here and play a lot of man coverage against these wide receivers. That's not happening. I would think there's going to be a lot of zone. There's going to be a lot of two deep zone. There's going to be a lot of quarter, half kind of defense being played by Mike Zimmer. He'd be crazy to play these guys man coverage because you got big wide receivers, you got fast wide receivers, and you got wide receivers. And this is why I think they drafted Jamar Chase as opposed to Penny Sewell. Look, you put these guys out there, they can score in one play. And the great thing about Joe Burrow, he's not afraid to let it fly. And he can read defenses, as he's already proven to me and everybody else who's watched him, in his brief time for the Bengals last year. So I got to believe going into a game like this, there's question marks all around the NFL, not just, with the Bengals and with Joe Burrow. He'll figure out pretty quickly, and so will Zach Taylor, exactly what Mike Zimmer's trying to do. And then I'm telling you, if it's a lot of man coverage, if it's that quarter, half coverage in the secondary, I mean, the Bengals got a bomb squad. Let's face it. If he has time and this offensive line holds up and Zimmer does not blitz and wants to play a lot of zone, he should be able to tear him up.
Hi, Dave Lapham here. Have you heard about In the Trenches with Dave Lapham, presented by First Star Logistics? Catch new episodes from the world of sports and broadcasting. Search for In the Trenches with Dave Lapham on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.